Welcome back everyone to episode 2 of Strategy and Stratagems, a series where High Queen Khalida leads the Court of Liberus in this Rise of the Tomb Kings Eye of the Vortex campaign for Warhammer 2. Last time we introduced everyone to the campaign mechanics of the Tomb Kings, and I promised to some extent that there will be more action following the first episode. But right now, since we are on turn 1, I'd like to take this time to get a view of the surroundings and understand our strategic conditions so that we may formulate a plan of action to pursue. So if you remember, our main goal for this campaign, our main objectives are to collect these 5 books of Nagash. Now, we need to keep these books in mind for our long-term strategic plan so that we may proceed towards them in the long term. So, for the time being, since we're in Lustria, there are 4 books of Nagash. The 6th book, the 7th book, the 5th book, and the 4th book. These will probably be the books that we aim for just because of close proximity to our own starting position. So let's see, we have the 6th book of Nagash, which unlocks more Lich Priests of Shadow, increases magic. And it's under the command of a powerful rogue army here. Okay. Then we have a book in the southern tip of Lustria at the Citadel of Dusk, the 7th book of Nagash, with canopic jars. Okay, so this is actually an important book of Nagash, since for research, the more Tomb Kings research, the slower their research gets, and we'll get to this in a minute. But the 7th book definitely has some strategic value for improving our own research rates, especially in the long term. The 5th book of Nagash is also under the command of a rogue army, sort of in eastern coast of Lustria. This one is purely to increase our elite unit and skeleton chariot cap, so we have Tomb Guards and Tomb Guard with halberds, and it increases army capacity. This is definitely a great one to aim for, since it will allow us to snowball further in increasing our army cap, since the Tomb Kings are limited by how many armies they can field, whereas other armies are only limited by their money. 4th book of Nagash, which is in the Awakening, where the Vampire Coast is, has a bulk reward of 250 canopic jars and increases the Lord Recruitment rank to +3 and wound recovery time for all characters. This middle reward is definitely, I think, something to keep in mind. It might actually be one of the first books that we aim to get, since recruiting new Tomb Kings at a higher rank is sort of an objectively good thing to aim for. So we'll keep this in mind. For our Lustrian strategic considerations, I must say that the 7th book of Nagash and probably the 5th and 4th book of Nagash are the most, shall we say, strategically sound or rewarding books. The 6th book of Nagash, probably for playing Grand Hierophant Khatep, this particular book would be of greater interest, but currently it's also in a rather awkward position in the spine of Sotek, I believe, in the Sotek Mountains in Lustria. So to get to this book, we would have to either march north through the Golden Colossus, through the Sentinels of Zeti, through this pass right here, and then march east and come back around to the south. Or we can march, would be southeast or east to the Dust Gate, kayaks, and then to the Citadel of Dusk, and then turn north and go up the mountains that way. And since this is the case, we would need to go to the Citadel of Dusk anyways. So I think for our first strategic move, we'll aim for the seventh book of Nagash in the Citadel of Dusk. Furthermore, let's consider our further long-term goals. So there's the second book of Nagash, controlled by Jean Dubin of the Pilgrims of Mermedia, another rogue army which sails around Ulthuan, I believe. Let's see, campaign line of sight over regions. Okay, income from trade. The rewards are certainly good, but it's quite out of the way from both Lustria and Khemri. So I'm thinking this is more of a secondary objective in case we want to increase our income much later. So this book we won't consider too much in our strategic plan of action. See, the 8th book of Nagash has effectiveness of all commandments plus 50%. Huh. Let's see. So this is in the Southlands. Then there's the 3rd book of Nagash. Regions will be hit by a sandstorm after sacking or occupying settlement. Okay. The 1st book. Okay, so to me it seems that in Lustria, the 7th, 5th, and 4th book of Nagash are definitely the most attractive to our strategic consideration. Plus, they're relatively condensed, where we can basically control the coast of Lustria, the southern and eastern coast of Lustria, and that'll allow us to gain all 3 books of Nagash. If necessary, we can go for the 6th book of Nagash in the spine of Sotek Mountains, though to me this seems like a secondary priority. Of the other books of Nagash, I think the 3rd book of Nagash seems to be the most attractive in the mountains here. Well, it's controlled by a rogue army, so it'll start moving around. But this casualty replenishment rate is really good since Tomb King's units, especially the mainline units, they're more meat shieldy and not necessarily tanky, so they don't hold for long. So having that increased replenishment rate just means that we can keep up momentum, that aggressive offensive momentum up. So I think for once we go to the Southlands, once we have to march towards Khemri for the final battle, the 3rd book of Nagash seems to be on our radar, so to speak, as a primary strategic goal. The 1st book of Nagash is quite far up in the Southlands. Hero capacity +1 for all heroes. I'm not necessarily a big fan, personally, of hero actions. I much rather use them as combat support units. I mean, more heroes is objectively great, but the fact that I don't see myself using heroes all that much, this doesn't seem to be all that concerning, at least to me. Plus, it's really out of the way in these mountains, just like the 6th book of Nagash is along the mountains with an awkward path to it. The 1st book of Nagash seems to hold similar considerations in mind. So I'm thinking, so these 4 books, the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 3rd book of Nagash are definitely the books that we need to keep in mind as primary, and then I'm thinking either the 8th book of Nagash or the 2nd book of Nagash as secondary objectives. So with this in mind, since most of our primary objectives are on the east coast, south and east coast of Lustria, that is where we will proceed with our campaign. So to me this seems like establishing a foothold in this province here, the Copper Desert. So we would like to take over the Dust Gate and the Golden Colossus, take it away from the Lizardmen, and then start marching. Would this be east? East or south? Call it east. And we'll march to Kayaks and Citadel of Dusk, and we'll go from there. So that means, for the moment, Citadel of Dusk is our primary objective within the first, call it in the early game, shall we say. Now that the long-term strategic objectives are out of the way, let us look at our remaining conditions. So diplomacy, there isn't much to discuss with... First of all, we don't have much access to many factions to discuss anything with, nor can we trade much. But since Northern Lustria is less of a concern to us, finding allies or non-aggression pacts or trade is much more interesting. However, the Bloodhall Coven is, shall we say, first of all, our relationship with them is going down, so getting a trade agreement or some kind of agreement has a lower chance of success. Let's see. Spine of Sotek Dwarves, non-aggression pact. We will probably not be dealing with dwarves all that much. They just don't seem to be... First of all, the geography prevents us from really dealing much with them. And second of all, they hold very little value to us. So we might just focus on allying with them or keeping them at bay or at arm's length.
Wisdom awaits.
The Order of Lore Masters under Teclis, though, are much more interesting. If we don't ally with them, they might definitely become a threat to our north. So that'll pull attention away from our southern move towards the Citadel of Dusk. So I'm thinking that allying or at least having cordial relations with the Order of Lore Masters is a good idea. So we will discuss...
I fear your lich priests have done you a great disservice.
Yes, indeed. We'll aim to get a non-aggression pact and a trade agreement with them if that is possible.
Consider it done.
Excellent. Which further increases our relations in the long run, so we might even forge a defensive or military alliance, which means that we will have a secure relationship to our north, and therefore any threats from the north coast from possible Skaven or Lizardmen incursions will be blocked off by Teclis. Great. So far, well, the Sentinels of Zeti we're at war with, and we will not open negotiations with the Sentinels because they are our enemy. What's next? Next is the Dynasty tree. So, as I've said in the previous episode, this is one of our primary considerations to keep in mind for planning out a strategy. So, let us explore. Let's look at the first dynasty. Each basic dynasty gives increased army capacity, which is obviously great, and it reduces our research. So we have to be very careful in choosing which dynasty we'd like to pursue. Also, in the previous episode, I discussed that Khalida's, I think, general playstyle or the abilities that she provides definitely improve sort of a skirmishy or a mobile style of gameplay, which is not exactly what I'm comfortable with, but that's definitely her strength. So I think, at least initially, we will try to focus our research in improving those capabilities that Khalida has, and we'll go over her abilities in a minute, once we're done with most of the other considerations. So the first dynasty leads to Wakaf, who is an ambusher. Okay. Right, and these just add heroes. Okay. chariots and Nehekara warriors. Nehekara warriors and Nehekara warriors. So possibly the runic inscriptions are of interest because of increasing the capabilities of chariots. Okay. And proclamation of the first dynasty, strategic buffs of, or strategic improvements of increased strategic movement range. I know I'm using the word strategic too much. I will be more reticent in that case. Reduction of infantry and chariot buildings, construction cost, and trade. Okay. So what interests us here is runic inscriptions and proclamation of the first dynasty. These other three technologies that increases our hero capacity are of, shall we say, situational use. So more short-term strategic planning in this case. We'll keep these in mind as we go along, but for now we won't be needing heroes mostly. Okay, second dynasty. Rakash. Rakash, public order, character leader, aura size, ward save, tax rate. This seems like an administrator special Tomb King, which is alright. Let's see, the quickening, skeleton horsemen, skeleton archers and horsemen. Okay. Nomad stock, skeleton horsemen, Nehekara horsemen, and bone edifice. Skeleton archers. Missile damage. So, since we've discussed that Khalida's, again, playstyle is more skirmishy, mobile, lightning strike-ish improvements, I think that's something that we need to keep in mind when considering technology. Proclamation of the Second Dynasty, minus 10% for cavalry buildings. Okay, growth. Okay, so I think so far the Second Dynasty offers the most because we'll be working on sort of a cavalry and archer focused military, I think. And plus, from what I understand with the Tomb Kings, cavalry is in relatively close proximity in the military infrastructure tree. It's not like we have to build like a level 4 or level 5 building. I think there are like level 2 or level 3 buildings that we can get to relatively easily. Let's see, the third dynasty, Thutep, for Cameron War Sphinxes. So this Tomb King is about, their specialty is heavy monstrous constructs. Boon of Ualapt, Carrion, Sokth, Tomb Scorpions, and Sepulchral Stalkers. Third Dynasty, capital settlement buildings. This dynasty is mostly focused on the specialist construct units such as Scorpions and Sepulchral Stalkers with some Carrions in there. We are not exactly interested in this until much later on. So far the Second Dynasty abilities and technologies hold prevalence. Fourth Dynasty, Lamizash, who is a Ushapti lover. I think this is sort of, let's see, what are the other abilities? +3 attack for heroes and Tomb Guard. Okay, Dark Brotherhood, Hyro Titans. More stronger binding is for Tomb Guard improvement. And Proclamation of the Fourth Dynasty, walls, garrisons, citadels, and estates. Right, this requires a focus on Tomb Guards, and that's not exactly what we're going to be going for. We're going to be going for more skirmish cavalry builds for that mobile playstyle, especially in combat. So this Ushapti and Tomb Guard are obviously objectively good, but I think this is something that we'll consider after we work on the Second Dynasty. The Third Dynasty, so I'm thinking that it'll be Second Dynasty and then Fourth Dynasty abilities initially. But let's look at the final two dynasties. 5th dynasty, Setep, hero action chance, Lichbray. So this is the Mage Tomb King. Ancient battle sites, ammunition for artillery units, the Skull Catapult and Casket of Skulls. Casket of Souls, excuse me. Invocation of Kuaf, Necropolis Knights, and Ancient Quarries, Necropolis Knights, and Catapults. Siege equipment is not really conducive of a mobile style of play, so this is of low priority to us. Income and growth in public order. Okay. Unit experience. All the proclamations of the various dynasties have excellent improvements. However, the second dynasty still holds the most value to us, at least in the shorter term. Let's see, 6th dynasty, Alcazar, skeleton chariots and skeleton archer chariots. So this particular Tomb King loves his chariots. Okay. Clothed in the divine, more Ushabti, underworld, gate necrosphinxes, and lost gold of Alcarad or Alharad. War Sphinxes. So this particular Tomb King likes chariots or improves chariots very much. We are going for a more cavalry and skirmisher focused playstyle. So I think the approach then in this case would be the second dynasty to begin to improve our lightning strike or mobile army composition. Then I'm considering that the 4th dynasty, either the 4th dynasty or the 1st dynasty, to start improving Nehekara warriors and chariots, because chariots will obviously would provide some, I think, good backbone to a cavalry focused playstyle in this case. And then the Hekara warriors are the offensive or aggressive core unit, which is much better than the basic skeleton warriors and skeleton spearmen. Okay, so in this case we will begin research of the 2nd dynasty, and after that we'll work on either the Quickening or Bone Edifice. The Quickening for improving the most amount of different units, and Bone Edifice to specifically improve archer damage and armor, though armor for skeleton archers doesn't really add much. But so either the Quickening or the Bone Edifice we'll decide once we've researched the core tech of the 2nd dynasty. Okay, and Rahash is okay. He's an administrator Tomb King, probably not something we will consider initially. Or we'll keep this option in mind. So that's technology. Let us look at our rights. These are special abilities that we can keep in mind. So the Great Incantation of Geheb here is what appears to be a administrative or logistical right. So it adds canopic jars, which is great. Growth plus 30 allows us to improve our growth buildings or our main city centers better. Reduction of all construction costs, and Tomb Swarm, which is I believe a siege special ability, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, to get this we need the Nehekaran Citadel. Okay, then Great Incantation of Khasar is a strategic defense right, because it forces all enemies to suffer massive attrition from sandstorms. Okay. Then there's the Great Incantation of Petra, which allows us to recruit a Petra's Necrotect, who increases the expansion capabilities of the Tomb Kings. He has good strategic value, but I believe the Petra's Necrotect is only one use. Then there's the Great Incantation of Tahoth, for the Casket of Souls, Lord Recruit rank, and the unit experience. So this Lord Recruit rank paired with the, what was it? The fourth book of Nagash would make our Tomb Kings, who are initially recruited, extremely powerful. Or, yes, they would go up for 6 levels. So I enjoy the Great Incantation of Tahath, not necessarily because of the Casket of Souls, because it's a slow artillery piece, but instead this unit experience improvement and the Lord Recruit rank is great. So before recruiting a massive army, you pop the Great Incantation of Tahath, and it increases the strength of both your lords and your troops that you are recruiting for that lord, or anyone for that matter. Okay, so none of these are conducive to a particular strategy. I think the Great Incantation of Geheb is something that I will aim to maintain as much as I can, because Canopic Jar, this is just logistically and strategically a good right to have on as much as you can. Khasar is situational. Great Incantation of Petra, more or less situational. And then Great Incantation of Tahath is something to keep in mind before recruiting a second lord and a second army, or more armies for that matter. Okay? And the Mortuary Cult, something to guide our gathering of resources. So the items that we can craft in the Mortuary Cult are a new dynasty, so for more armies. But this requires huge amounts of money and huge amounts of canopic jars. This is not something that we will consider early game, or early in our considerations. The Flock of Jaff, this is something that will basically unlock itself on its own because we will get 100 canopic jars relatively quickly. Usirian's Legion of the Netherworld requires golden idols and 200 canopic jars. And Nehekara warriors are quite potent. So I'm thinking both Usirian's Legion of the Netherworld and Storm Riders of Khasar are the 2 Legions of Legend that we want to aim to get. So we need golden idols and iron. The Storm Riders of Khasar are really good since this is our Legions of Legend, mobile, awesome, super great cavalry strike unit. We just need to find where golden idols are. The closest, really? The closest are in far off northern Nagarand? That can't be right. Okay, that's unfortunate. I suppose that means we'd look for trade partners. Okay, what about iron? Closest iron is southern Nagarand, close to Quintex, where Marathi is in here. Interesting. That's rather odd, but obviously not something that we can consider because Nagaron to us does not hold much value or interest. The Venom Knights of Asaf, it's not something I think that we would like to work towards. The Storm Riders and Usirian's Legion of the Netherworld are much more of interest to us. And then in terms of weapons, armor, enchanted items, talismans, and arcane items, none of these items I think will guide our strategic planning. Most of these items will, I think, basically pop up as we get more resources due to trade or conquest. So we'll keep this in mind, but if anything, we want to aim for Usirian's Legion of the Netherworld and Storm Riders of Khasar, because these 2 Legions of Legend are really truly adding to our own potential. Okay, so now that the strategic, diplomatic, technological, and special considerations are out of the way, let us look at the potential of our Copper Desert conquest. So let's look at Khalida. Khalida has spearmen, 2 archers, necropolis knights, and sepulchral stalkers. These 2 are the mobile cavalry strike force. The archers are there to skirmish, and the skeleton spearmen are there to hold. Let us look first at Khalida and see what her abilities are. Beloved of Asaf, that's something that we went over last episode. Let's see. Okay, so large tree, let us look. The venom staff, armor piercing, magical attacks, untainted, and a damage spell. Okay. Then her mounts are a chariot and a necro serpent. Good, because we are going to be focusing on a cavalry playstyle. Turned into madness, charge bonus, physical resist. Resistance abilities are always good. There's no objective reason not to take physical various physical and ward resistances, especially. Ancient Tyrant. Good for sacking, good for sort of a raiding style of play where you raid settlements and sack them. Embalmed in Elixir, or Elixir. More hit points. I think this is of marginal value because this is situational, increasing our fire resistance because we don't know who will be using fire magic. The lizardmen don't typically use fire magic. Ceremonial bandages, missile resistance, 15%. I think of these 4 special ones, Returned in Madness is definitely the most attractive to us. Let's see. Her unique skill tree here, Asaf, the Goddess of Magic and Vengeance, increases magical power reserve and increases damage of archers. Okay, that's good. That improves our ranged capabilities. True Blessing of Asaf. It is an ability that also improves our ranged capabilities. And leading from the Blessing of Asaf we have Purified, Reduction of Attrition, increased experience for skeleton archers and their ammunition, Legions of Asaf, Legionary Barrage, it's a damage ability, and Embodiment of Asaf, which improves Necropolis Knights and Sepulchral Stalkers. Okay. These 3 abilities here are of great value to us, especially Purified with passive regeneration. Regeneration is always great. Okay. Right, so Liberus is best and Legions of the Asp Goddess. Well, mostly Liberus is best, is great for improving the military, okay? And her final ability, Warrior Queen, more resistance, and just improves her in general, adding Frenzy. Okay. So this is this is the blue line, red line, yellow line. The yellow line of abilities is all about combat, personal combat stats. Indomitable Will. I think because of a mobile, because of this focus on a skeleton army as well as strategic aggressive stance, we want to focus on the red and the blue line. Probably first focusing on the blue line to go for Root Marcher. Let's see. Let's look at the entire blue line, see if there's anything in particular that stands out. Root Marcher simply increases our speed, which is excellent. Iron Disciplinarian, since Khalida is going to be marching most of the time, public order is not of her concern. Sandsweeper, raiding. This is possible interest since we will be going for that more aggressive playstyle. That may not necessarily always require conquest, but possibly raiding to increase income. Soul Reaper, casualty replenishment is always great since we're skeletons die. Yes, skeletons die. Think about that for a minute. Skeletons die very quickly. Notebook Jar Hoarder, that's sort of resource generation, not something I think Khalida really needs in her aggressive style of play. Attend Me, it's something that we can't escape, but that's an objectively good ability, increases the strength of our own units upon recruitment and increases our recruitment pool. Lightning Strike is good, especially for aggressive style of play, because it prevents enemies from calling upon reinforcements. Imperishable, reduction of attrition. This is definitely something that we're looking for because of lots of marching, lots of walking around in chaos and vampiric corruption. All is mine, looting, sacking, post-battle loot. Possibly. This has marginal value compared to imperishable, in my opinion. The Dead Sand Sentinel. We're not going to be doing much ambushing. We are going to be springing the ambushes. So this is of limited value. Renowned and Feared. Not as interesting as Imperishable or Lightning Strike. Okay. And then so the yellow line the yellow line will be of secondary consideration. Our primary focus are the blue and the red lines. So for the red line we have increased aura leadership, arrows of Asaf, increased ammunition and damage for archers, Sunscorched Bones, not something that we necessarily want, but that'll increase the durability of our basic skeletons. Elite Cavalrymen. Increases weapon strength, damage, and speed of all cavalry. Charioteers, Stonemasonry, this is for constructs. And Stone Sentinels, this is for more construct monsters. So I think we'll be going for Arrows of Asaf and Elite Cavalrymen, sort of split evenly. And then these we'll consider later on. Okay, so that's Khalida. Mostly focusing on archers and cavalry as our army composition. And before I end this episode, because I'm already going on too long, and apologies again for not a whole lot of action, next episode we're going to go into definite execution in conquering the Copper Desert. So for the time being we have open graves and possibility of constructing a crypt barracks. However, since we are going for a more skirmish and mobile style of play, I think the Quicksand Swamp is something that we want to purchase as soon as we can to increase our cavalry military infrastructure. And that is for our short-term improvement. Chariots will come much later. Chariots are not something that we want to focus on, nor elite infantry. We want to go mostly for the cavalry line. Right. Okay. In this case, so we're aiming to get the Quicksand Swamp if possible. That is for our construction. So before we advance on the Dust Gate, we will focus on recruitment of units. So for this moment we will max out our skeleton archer capabilities and recruit skeleton spearmen because they have at least okay melee defense, so they're there to mainly hold the line. And at this point I'd like to end the episode. This, you could say, is the second part of the introduction, but I would count this as truly getting a grasp of all our strategic considerations and conditions and setting our goals. And the next thing to do is to come up with our plan of action, which is something that we'll work on in episode 3. So see you next week. I hope you enjoyed this second episode of Strategy and Stratagems, as we're playing as High Queen Khalida of the Court of Libras. Please don't forget to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. I hope you have a great day and see you next time. Thank you.